Good evening, Professor Hartman. My name is Pavel Karima, and my oral presentation will be about the deep structural elements of post-Soviet Russian culture, and I will use these index cards, which I will provide in their entirety upon submission. I'll also be utilizing the framework that was provided to us in the Samovar text, Family, Religion, and State, and how these deep cultural institutions have shaped modern Russian identity, historical memory, and created a certain distrust for external influence. Most people think of Russia through news headlines, Cold War stereotypes, and then Cold War imagery. But beneath that, there's a deep cultural structure that's been shaped by hardship, survival, and resistance. Central to Russian society is the deep structural elements such as the family, the Russian family. It's central to breeding resilience and identity in every individual. The Russian Orthodox Church in its revival in the post-Soviet dissolution, and of course the complex relationship of Russian society and the state, which is shaped by frequent invasion, collapse of political systems, and of course external interference. These pillars have also shaped attitudes towards security, sovereignty, and of course the protection of Russian culture. First and foremost, the most important, I believe, deep structural institution is the family. As Samovar puts it, the family is the first and most important socializing agent. So before anyone experiences society, they're always going to learn from the family first. The family is going to teach you societal rules, norms, and values. In Russia, the family is also considered a protective survival unit. There are many extended family traditions, such as multi-generational households, which are very common. Individuals in their mid to late 20s are often living with their family. There may even be grandparents living in these households. And again, this practice comes from the immense hardships that the society has faced from invasion, repression, and even economic crisis. As the historian Ransel puts it, kin were relied upon heavily for help in virtually every aspect of life. Family is also important in emotional and collective identity for the Russian people. Russian culture is first and foremost has a lot of collectivist tendencies, and again, this is foundational to the importance of family in everyday life. These type of societies are commonly facing resource shortages, conflict, and they tend to prioritize societal interdependence. And again, this is why collectivism has been so popular in Russian society over the years. Family in Russian society, first and foremost, you think loyalty, the preservation of identity, and not just a bloodline, but a cultural identity. And of course, it's first and foremost a support system. Families are also important in maintaining historical memory, and in Russia's case, unfortunately, traumatic memory. The families will often pass down historical information, such as the Mongolian rule, the Golden Ore, the times of the Mongolian rule, or Polish and Swedish invasions, the Napoleonic wars, World War II, which is called the Great Patriotic War in Russia. And again, there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of pain that's involved in this. Nearly 30 million Soviet deaths, and of course the 1990s, the Soviet collapse, another very important aspect of Russian culture, which was shaped by these turbulent times. As the historian Figs puts it, Russia's history is one of continuous invasions from west and east, and Russia shaped Russia's sense of vulnerability. And again, this memory becomes essentially a cultural defense mechanism for Russian society. The next deep structural institution that I'll discuss is religion. As Samovar puts it, religion is a an important deep structural institution. It'll shape enduring values, so not just familial values, but societal values as a whole. Moral expectations, the worldview as we know it, and ways of explaining life as events. You're seeing it through not necessarily a personal, a perceptive lens, but a religious lens. And in Russia, Orthodox Church plays a very unique role in this. During the Soviet years, you had suppression of religious practices and freedoms. As the historian Anderson puts it, the Soviet state closed, demolished, or repurposed tens of thousands of churches. Priests were persecuted. And communism essentially became a belief system, which it typically does. Now, there has been a major post-Soviet revival, and again, this is why the church has become so central to Russian tradition and Russian culture today. After the 1991 collapse, the church was a major part of cultural restoration, and the Russian church typically has a lot of it's interwoven with a lot of Russian history. You're going to have rulers and important political figures that are actually canonized. People turn to Orthodoxy for stability, for not just social stability, but spiritual stability, and turn to the church for to remember this historical identity. Um, a society facing these hardships and chaos and moral uncertainty often turns to some sort of spiritual outlet, and that's what happened in Russian society. As the historian McGuckin believes, this created a common heritage of Christian civilization across generations, and this is no different for the Russian Orthodox Church. The Russian Orthodox Church, again, is heavily tied to historical cultural continuity. The church places great stress on remembering ancestors and symbolizing Russian history, societal unity, and of course, deep civilizational heritage. So it also continues to it actually emphasizes the collectivist ideal, the Russian Orthodox Church. It has also become a protectorate of Russian culture. The Orthodoxy is tied to national identity today. You'll see the Russian Orthodox cross on many government buildings and on many of the government flags. It is also considered a protectorate from Western liberal norms, which are seen as a threat to Russian tradition. The church is essentially a guardian of cultural continuity. Um, the next deep structure institution that we'll talk about is the state. Samovar states that the state preserves political, legal, and social systems. Now, these have changed often in Russian society, but again, the state has been central to essentially maintaining Russian cultural continuity. In Russia, history has a very complex relationship with the state, and it can be traumatic at times. You have a long history of invasion, and the state was seen as central to protecting the people. You have 1,000 years of threats. You have Catholic invasions, which were often seen as a threat to the Russian Orthodox Church. Again, Polish and Swedish invasions often. The catalyst of which was also the Catholic Church, world wars, and so on. So the historian Hosking says that invasion has shaped Russian culture, and it has made the state a central authority in Russian society. And again, the leaning towards the collectivism in Russian society. Now, the post-Soviet collapse is also a major part in the relationship between the state and the people. In 1991, there was basically no ownership structure. So there was a lot of Western-backed privatization and asset liquidation. So by 1998, the historian Stiglitz says economic output had fallen by almost half, and poverty increased from 2% to over 40%. And of course, this has created some of these negative views about the West and led many Russians to believe that West has exploited this vulnerability. The chaos of the 90s is a deep cultural trauma once again. And again, this was, this is the reason why many NGOs are seen as making attempts at changing political and social influencing. The historian Huntington says civilizations are the deepest, most enduring form of cultural identity, and these deep structure institutions resisted this threat of NGOs. NGOs are actually not allowed in Russia today, and of course there's modern distrust, and again this is caused by post-Soviet collapse, and of course the influence that the West has wielded on post-Soviet states, which has in some way affected Russia economically. And again, this has created an emphasis for Russian society that where they really cherish sovereignty, tradition, and cultural protection. So, in conclusion, we've reviewed how the Russian family is central to identity and memory. Religion is central to cultural, moral, and historical continuity. And the Russian state, which is shaped by invasion, collapse, and interference, has been a deep structural institution, which is, of course, it's key in understanding the Russian perception. Of course, no society is monolithic, but understanding this heritage, trauma, and identity will help to explain the Russian perspective. And of course, a better understanding can always lead to dialogue, which will always lead to cooperation and, of course, regional and international stability. So, this is my oral presentation, and thank you so much for listening.